Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it, not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences. Such as,
I hope that we can get to a place in the next 50 years where folks can say they have Tourette syndrome, but do it in a way that is without shame, is without burden, is without concern that they will be judged, because nobody should have to live like that.
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Hey, it's Ben, and welcome to a very special episode of Tourette's podcast, welcoming back to the show a VIP guest. She's the president and CEO of the Tourette Association of America. My friend, Amanda Talty, is on the podcast today. It's a great episode. We'll talk about what the TAA has been up to. We'll talk about science and research. We talk about how the TAA has developed over time, now that they're in their 50th year as an organization. It's a great talk, illuminating, and we answer as best we can a frequent question that's been coming in lately about a potential new treatment for people with persistent tic disorders. That's coming up. First, got a question here from a parent. It's a great question about a conflict at school and what to do about it. And it's a little bit nuanced, but I wanted to read it. It's actually posted in the Tourette's podcast discussion group on Facebook right now, and I'll just read it to you. My 12-year-old son with Tourette syndrome has attended the same private Christian school for the past 9 years, from 3-year-old pre-K to now in 7th grade. We have had a great experience, so great that I recommended the school to another local Tourette syndrome family who was looking for a middle school for their son. Long story short, 8 weeks into the school year, the administration decided the boy was too disruptive, and they could not provide the support he needed, even though he had good grades and loved the school. It was blatant discrimination due to his tics. The school agreed to reimburse all of their tuition and fees. The mom has asked me not to say or do anything until she gets her money back. My questions/concerns: number one, if I write to the administration and voice my concerns, will my son be targeted? Number two, I cannot act like it didn't happen. There's another kid in the 10th grade that also has TS. Number three, if I go to media, I could bring unwanted attention to my son, and we know that a 12-year-old middle school boy is trying to fit in and blend in. Number four, I haven't told my son about the kid being asked to leave because of his tics. I worry that it will increase my son's anxiety, make his tics worse, and I don't want him feeling like he needs to suppress his tics at school. Any and all suggestions and opinions are welcome. Thank you. So that's the question from this parent. What do you do when you see something like this that personally bothers you for pretty solid reasons, but the effect could spill over into impacting your son who has TS? So that's the question, or set of questions rather, from this parent. I'm not a parent, so I don't know exactly what I would do. What would you do? One thing I love about this community, this podcast community, is we have such a diversity of people listening, including parents who want to manage and maintain a great life for their kids. Head over to the Tourette's podcast discussion group on Facebook and add your thoughts. You'll see this question posted up there. I get it though. You want justice and you want to make sure the right thing is happening for your child or for other children who might face similar things. But at the same time, the very nature of it is delicate because you don't want to bring undeserved stress to kids who are already perhaps having a challenging time working with something like Tourette syndrome amid the already challenging dynamics of school, whether it's academic performance or social life, or I guess both, right? But this is a real scenario that a parent is trying to make a wise decision with, and it's easily repeatable. Like this could happen anywhere. So just thought I would put it out there. So again, that question is at the Tourette's podcast discussion group on Facebook if you would like to weigh in. There are already people weighing in with their answers, and there's diversity in the answers as well. Also, go to YouTube and do a search for the Tourette Association of America. You'll find their account, and you can just look up a variety of videos that they have on different subjects, including going to school, including Tourette and the college experience. There's a playlist of videos about workplace rights and accommodations, anti-bullying. There's so much stuff there that you can search through on parenting, on interactions with law enforcement even. So much stuff that you can look through and view totally for free. It's on YouTube. great resource of information from the Tourette Association of America, in addition to what you can find at tourette.org. And on that note, let's get to our conversation this week with a very special guest, the president and CEO of the Tourette Association of America, an organization that is celebrating its 50th year. Just for the record, could you state your name and your title and where it is you work?
My name is Amanda Talty, and I am the president and CEO of the Tourette Association of America.
And you've been with TAA for some years now as president. Was it late 2018 or early 19? When did you come aboard as president?
Mid 2018, I was officially appointed president and CEO.
And we've talked about this in the past year on the podcast last time you were on, but we have a lot of new listeners. So could you remind us or just refresh us on what connected you with the TAA or kind of how you came to the position?
Oh, sure. So the short story is the immediate past president of the Tourette Association and I had worked together previously at the American Red Cross. And when he joined the TAA, he asked me if I would come along with to serve as the vice president of development. So that's the short answer. The little bit of the longer answer is that in my family, there are mental health conditions, specifically bipolar. My mother has lived with bipolar disorder all of my life. My son, recently diagnosed with ADHD. So this is a field that has always been very personal to me. So when I learned about the position with the Tourette Association, and I learned more about the condition itself, how it overlaps with so many other things, but specifically, really the challenges that families have in finding adequate care, appropriate advice, treatments, right? All of that very much resonated with me. So that was, really why I came along to the TAA. I figured, well, if I can take my skills and bring it to an organization that is being largely overlooked by the funding community and on behalf of families that are dealing with a condition that is really highly misunderstood by the general public, well, isn't that just a great place for me to be? So that's how I got here.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's really good to have you back on. Like I said, it's been a couple of years, I think, since last you were on the podcast, but, in person anyway. But TAA is a presence here as the sponsor, which we all greatly appreciate. And, one thing I've been plugging on the past few episodes is the gala coming up on November 10th.
Yes.
Could you talk about that? What is the gala all about and who's going to be there?
Sure. So our gala is the largest fundraising event that we host each year. It brings in a large percentage of the funding that we use to support all of the work that we do. So all of the toolkits we make available, all of the videos we create, all of that is underwritten with contributions from individuals like your listeners. So this year, it's a very exciting year. We're celebrating 50 years of the Tourette Association, and we are honoring a few very special people. So Rowena Sherling, who has been on the board for countless years. She's the former board chair. We are honoring her this year, and we are very pleased and feel privileged that she has finally allowed us to do so. Certainly earned it. We are also honoring Javier Evans, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Webster Bank. Javier is a passionate advocate for communities that are underserved and for communities like ours. So he is, one of our honorees this year, and we're very thrilled to have him. A.D. Smith, who is joining us from across the pond. He is our special guest. He's a brand ambassador for the TAA. He is most notably known for his program, The Three Drinkers, on Amazon. And this year's MC is David Begnaud, who is a CBS News correspondent and a prior honoree. So it promises to be a really exciting event. It's happening in Manhattan. It's the first time we are in person post COVID. So it's just going to be a really wonderful evening to bring everybody who supports the community, everybody who lives with this condition together in one room to really celebrate this organization and everything that it provides to individuals that need it.
Yeah, and there's more than maybe some people realize, especially if, sometimes we have new listeners whose, children were just diagnosed, or someone who was just diagnosed themselves, and they were Googling, they found the podcast and found the Tourette Association. I mean, you guys do a lot of programming, webinars that you offer. The YouTube page is rich with information, and then in-person events, which is cool to see this back in person. I was honored to MC the gala a couple of years ago. I think that was in 2020, and that was a fantastic time. And it was just nothing but positive and all about raising the supports for the Tourette community. And as you said, it's special because this is the 50th year of the Tourette Association. What can we be proud of in that time? I mean, 50 years ago, the landscape of Tourette awareness had to be somewhat desolate, I would imagine. And then look where we are now.
No, it was vastly different. If you think about the humble beginnings of the organization, it was started around a kitchen table by just a handful of families who met because they happened to find themselves lucky enough to be seeing a single doctor who really understood the condition. And that was how they had the benefit to come together and meet. And out of that really grew this organization. The Pearl family in particular was really a driving force in bringing it to an office in Bayside, Queens, which we still call home to this day. And they, along with these other families, really started a movement. They were really the beginning of what we now call the Tourette Association of America. So the landscape and the understanding about Tourette syndrome has drastically changed through the years. This organization has given out over $21 million in research funding, which has resulted in countless dollars from other funding entities like NIH and NIMH to really begin uncovering the mechanisms of Tourette syndrome. So what causes the condition within the brain, and to really identify therapeutics to help people live with it more effectively, like CBIT. Right. These are things that nobody knew about, right? I mean, it was only in 2016, 2017, right, when I first joined the Tourette Association, that we uncovered the genes that play a role in TS. And all of those discoveries were really made possible through this organization, not to mention the countless chapters and support groups across the country that have grown over the years to provide that boots on the ground support in communities, right? But the landscape has really changed dramatically. And you can see, I don't have it in front of me, I'll see if I can pull it up for you, but if you see the shift in terms of our presence as both an organization as well as, how many physicians we have throughout the nation that can speak about TS and are knowledgeable about the condition, right? The map has really changed and morphed throughout the years, where maybe on both coasts, you sort of had a handful of activity going on. Now if we look at it and how it's changed over the years, really in the U of the country, if you look at the map, really throughout the U, we have a presence. We have centers of excellence throughout that region. And then we have some sprinkled in the middle of the country, which used to be completely a vacuum of support and services. So it's really come a very long way. And I encourage everybody to just, get involved and help us continue to grow this organization so that we can just continue to fight the stigma, the misunderstanding, and just make it so that people who are living with the condition no matter where they are on the spectrum, whether it's very mild or it's very severe, are getting the support that they need, and are feeling comfortable in their lives so that they can live and be their best selves.
Well, it really is amazing to think about the spread of knowledge that has followed. When I was young, it was the Tourette Syndrome Association, and then the rebranding to the Tourette Association of America. To where seeing someone who's an expert doesn't necessarily mean you have to take like a week of vacation time and travel to a medical center anymore. There's knowledge near you. And I put that in quotes because some people still have to drive distances to see the experts they want to see. Sometimes people go to doctors and they don't get the answer maybe they're looking for because maybe the doctor himself or herself doesn't necessarily have or isn't up to speed yet. But I mean, just seeing how all that has changed is really, really remarkable. And looking at diagnosis numbers and, some of the recent numbers that have come out where it's, was it 1 in every 50 school-age children has Tourette? I mean, proving that it's not a rare disorder.
That I would say is probably the biggest shift. We can certainly speak about the growth of the organization, but just the fundamental understanding of the prevalence of the condition from 1972 to now. Mm-hmm. Originally it was thought to affect, only a handful of people. It was indeed considered a rare condition. Mm-hmm. And then now, just a couple of months ago, thanks to our partnership with the CDC, we, now know that 1 in 50 school-age children have Tourette syndrome or a tic disorder. So that shift in and of itself, I think, just speaks volumes. And I think the more work we do to really educate the public, we're going to see that number go up too. And it was interesting when we mm-hmm. first promoted that, we were very excited. Tourette Association's very excited to have these new numbers. And, a lot of people in the community, and rightly so, ask the question, well, why are you happy about that? Well, why are you happy that more people have to deal with this? And, it was such an interesting lens for me personally, because we weren't happy that more people have to deal with it. We were happy because the people who are dealing with it are now being counted.
Right. Exactly.
Right. We are now accurately counting all of the people who, and this is, of course, we're talking about the 1 in 50 school-age children. So this number doesn't even necessarily include the countless adults who continue, mm-hmm. To live with the condition. But that's a tremendous thing for us to really be able to say, no, like you just think you don't know somebody with Tourette syndrome.
Exactly.
We know you know somebody. We know you know somebody in your community, somebody in your workplace, somebody in your school, somebody from your childhood was living with this condition and was struggling with it, and their family was struggling with it, and you didn't even know it because they weren't being counted. So I think that knowledge and the recognition that it really is a lifelong condition, and it's a spectrum condition, that it can be very mild for some people, and then it can be very severe for others. So I think that if you ask me what the biggest change is over the last 50 years, mm-hmm. for me, that's the thing. That's it. It's the fundamental understanding and recognition that this is indeed a lifelong condition. Some people are lucky enough that their tics wean as they get older and they hit adulthood, where their tics are largely go unnoticed, or they really don't affect the person anymore. But that it really does continue throughout the lifespan, and that it ebbs and it flows, and that it affects 1 in 50 school-age children, right? It is a childhood onset condition. So if you think about, a classroom, if the average classroom has 20 kids in it and the average third grade across 5 classrooms has 100 kids in it, right? You have 2 kids in the 4th grade,
right? Yeah,
who are dealing with this right now. As far as we know today, right? Because I firmly believe that the prevalence is even higher. And for every additional person that we can identify, and for every new prevalence number that shows there are a lot of people living with these conditions, that translates into attention. Whether we like it or not, the bigger the numbers, the more attention we get from funders, the more attention we get from politicians, the more we can show the societal impact of Tourette syndrome and tic disorders, the quicker we can get the funding, the attention that ultimately results in additional support, additional resources for the community, additional understanding, additional treatments, right? So if you ask me, that's really the success story in 50 years of the TAA, that we've gotten to this 1 in 50 number, and that the CDC blesses this number. It's on their website,
right?
And that we are aligned in the knowledge that this is not a rare condition.
It's also really great, I think, for confidence and acceptance as well, because a lot of people, they may be counted among the diagnosis numbers, but they're living kind of quietly with it because they may have some sense of shame, or they don't have a community around them, so they don't do much talking about it. And they can do what, I did growing up, which is just masking it and trying to kind of blend in and not let people know I have this. And I think it was because of the sense of isolation I had. And if, you think about 1 in 50, that's a lot of people. Sometimes it just feels good to have a posse to where, and know that there are people out there who are, have a similar story as you. And, that can be really confidence inspiring inside the Tourette community as well, I think.
Absolutely. I think the shame that I know so many members of the Tourette syndrome community feel that they carry with them each day is just the absolute saddest thing for me. I have met far too many adults who had TS as a kid who, despite the fact that they still clearly have tics, will disassociate with the fact that they have Tourette syndrome.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because I think that there's a shame, there's a pain there. And I get it, right? I completely get it. I mean, if you went through, we've all had our experiences with bullies, right? So, for those of us who had it particularly rough, that's not a time in anyone's life that they want to revisit. And it's certainly not something that if you have persevered, you have moved out on the other end of it, your tics are largely not interfering with anything. I can completely understand why one of the last things you might want to do is put yourself in a room with a bunch of people who are ticking. Mm-hmm. And possibly bring all of those emotions and maybe even some tics home with you.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. I 100% understand that. But it's also the thing that I find to be, very challenging for our collective efforts. It can be challenging to communicate the importance of acknowledging a condition when so many people who live with it are hiding from it and not wanting to talk about it and not want to share their stories. And at the end of the day, it's really the stories, those personal stories, that's the make or break stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you don't live with it, if you're not swimming in it every day, if your only understanding of Tourette comes from social media and movies, mm-hmm. You're missing out. You're missing the nuance. You're not seeing the whole picture. And, our goal at the Tourette Association, and my personal goal, is I really want people to see the whole picture. Because I think if we could just get your average Joe to see the whole picture, see the truth, see the truth without the shame, they'd be a whole lot more helpful in getting this community what it needs, right? They'd be more willing to volunteer. They'd be more willing to donate. They'd be more willing to contribute. And they would be in themselves advocates, allies, to go out and tell people that, again, are only getting their understanding from social media and movies. We'll have more advocates out there to say, no, that's not what it is. So yeah, I hope that we can get to a place in the next 50 years where folks can say they have Tourette syndrome, or they had it, or they currently have it, whatever, but do it in a way that is without shame, is without burden, is without concern that they will be judged, because nobody should have to live like that. Certainly people who have been born with a neurological condition. Why should you feel that way?
Right.
You just shouldn't. So that's, I'm hoping that we can, on its most simplistic level, that's where I'm hoping we can find ourselves in another 50 years.
The Tourette Association of America is the premier nonprofit working to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support for those with Tourette syndrome or a tic disorder. With a network of over 130 chapters, support groups, and centers of excellence, the TAA engages with communities across the nation in an effort to provide tools, webinars, workshops, and support for all seeking assistance. As a primary sponsor of Tourette's podcast, the TAA supports authentic conversations showcasing the diverse representation of the Tourette community. To learn more, go to tourette.org. That's TOURETTE.org. The Tourette Association of America. Uncontrollable, unstoppable. So you mentioned some of the research support and the science that kind of helps us to tell the story and really fix the narrative of what Tourette syndrome is in terms of the general public, but also with ourselves, so we can have the opportunities to seek treatment that fits with our lives. You had mentioned CBIT, which is something that came into my consciousness in the past handful of years. I was not familiar with it before, say several years ago. Well, is there anything else happening on the science front right now with TAA that TAA is looking at?
Yes, well, there are, we have our research grants program, which we award about $700,000 to $800,000 a year to what we call young investigators, so early career scientists, right? We're really trying to get the attention and get our hooks into the brightest minds early on. So we offer this award, and we just gave out this year 4 new research grants for scientists that are from across the country, Wake Forest, University of New South Wales, which is, over in the UK, West Virginia University, and Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And these projects really run the gamut from really studying the challenges of stigmatization and discrimination. So what challenges does it pose to just live in the world knowing that you're being stigmatized, right? So that's not even, that's a project that's really looking at this social construct that can affect individuals with TS. So, we have a project that's looking at that. So we do that. And then, there's a whole nother project that's really looking at learning mechanisms in the brain. There's another study that's examining the improvement of CBIT and how putting CBIT together with transcranial magnetic stimulation can improve outcomes, and does it improve outcomes? And then, work into really understanding the motor physiology of the condition. So these awards, you can see, really run the gamut. We throw the net pretty wide in terms of the types of projects that we underwrite, because we want to try to learn as much as we can about the condition and how it affects individuals as quickly as possible, right? So we have that happening. And then I know that's something that we had funded in the past, a project that we had funded in the past that has now gotten some legs in terms of the community's interest, is the wearable watch device to help control ticks, right?
That's a hot topic.
It's a hot topic. The community has always called for non-medicinal therapies, right? And who can blame them with all the side effects that can come along with medication?
Sure.
It certainly makes sense that people would be looking for other types of therapeutics. And that's largely where CBIT came from, right? This desire from the community to have us explore non-medicinal treatments, non-pharmacological treatments. And then this is really aligned with that. So I know it's getting legs. Lots of people are asking questions. What I'll say is that the research is promising, but we don't have nearly enough information to say definitively, you're going to get this thing and it's going to work.
Right. Yeah.
We're just not there yet. But we did, the TAA did put some funding towards the initial research into this. So Dr. Stephen Jackson, who is actually a UK-based scientist, he was really exploring how do alterations in brain chemistry and TS contribute to the occurrence and control of tics. That was sort of the initial work that went into the development of this wearable device. And there is some additional work being done out at the University of Washington, which is actually Center of Excellence for the TAA by Dr. Kevin Black. He is looking to replicate the findings out of Stephen Jackson's, original work with the device. So what I'll say is, this isn't going to be on market anytime soon. There's still a lot of research that needs to be done, a lot of efficacy data that we're waiting on. There should be more data coming out about this in January, as I understand it, and once that does come out, the Tourette Association will, we will have our experts look at it and synthesize it for us so that we can communicate out to the community about what the latest and greatest findings on this are. But it's promising. I think we're all excited, anxiously awaiting the proof, and, crossing our fingers, while we wait that indeed this is a major breakthrough. But there are some outstanding questions, and frankly, I would not at all presume to be able to speak specifically about the science itself. So I don't want to get into too much detail, but I know, there are just some questions from myself and some others here at the TAA, how much of this is a matter of distractibility, right? Because we know people who have Tourette syndrome and tic disorders, when they are in the middle of something that they are enjoying or they're focused on, their tics can melt away.
Yep.
So how much of this is the distractibility thing? How much of this is maybe it's creating something that's soothing and thus lowering stress levels, and that is translating to lessened tic response? And really how long over a period of time can that be sustained? Like, is there a point at which the body's saying, oh, well, you've been doing this to me long enough. Now I'm just used to it. So I'm not really, doesn't do anything for me anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I'm not entirely sure how many of these questions have been definitively answered. But we are working very closely with the original scientist on this, Steve Jackson, the company that is working on the development of the device. We are in contact with them, talking to them about their progress. And obviously Kevin Black, who is a director of one of our centers of excellence, we're also in contact with them. So we have eyes on this, but please don't run out and buy anything just yet. If you see something on the market, always do your own independent research on anything. But I get that we're all looking for the silver bullet. So, and if we find it, we're going to be the first ones to let you know.
Well, that's great. And because that question has come into the podcast several times, and I didn't know exactly what to say yet. I definitely wanted to ask about that. And so the answer, yeah, it's exciting research. We need more research. It's good to stay skeptical about things that even look promising if we don't know exactly for sure yet. So that's great advice to, don't go out and just buy something just yet. We understand there may be excitement, and sometimes there may be a sense of desperation that I want something that works. So it's good that this research is going on so we can answer some of these questions for the people who are curious about wearable devices as something that may relieve Tourette.
Yeah, and we did have Dr. Jackson speak at our conference this past May. He gave a presentation to the scientific community as part of our research symposium, but he also did something for families and other individuals who were in attendance. So I believe those are currently available on our YouTube site, but as we're talking, I'm actually making a note to myself to make sure that they're up on our YouTube site, because that's another place folks can go if they really want to know more about the technology and understand how it works and what they found to date. That those are two very good presentations that folks can watch. So I'll make sure that they're up there. So if you're listening to this and you don't see them there yet, they're coming.
Okay. Well, I will definitely link to the YouTube site in the show notes with this episode, and that'll be at tourettespodcast.com. Of course, you can just Google, or you could just look up Tourette Association on YouTube and find all kinds of stuff, all kinds of topics that you guys have hit, from, sort of internal family issues and dealing with things. I think I remember a webinar about being a dad to somebody, who has Tourette. I mean, just things that are really specific. And that's really, really nice to see that this isn't just sort of general yawn information. This is really exciting stuff. And for people who are maybe somewhat new to this and want to get more involved, how can people get involved more generally with the TAA? If I'm an adult or a parent of someone with TS, I don't have the realization of resources around me, but I would like to get involved. How does that happen?
Yeah, I think you can just reach out to us. So go to our website. We have an active intake and referral department. So you can reach out directly to us, and we will connect you with any resources that we have that we think will support you in whatever it is that you need. And also just always make sure to follow our social media channels. We promote a lot of our webinars and a lot of our programmatic opportunities through our Facebook, our Instagram, even LinkedIn. So if you're looking to just keep your finger on the pulse of the types of programs that we're offering, please follow us in those ways. Yeah. So just stay in touch, reach out. Again, but really our social media channels are probably the best way to really stay abreast of the various programs that we're running. And I also just want to note that we do offer online support groups. So for anyone that might be listening, that doesn't have a chapter in their area or a support group in your geographic area, you're the person that we run online support groups for. So again, reach out, tell us what you're looking for, and we will make sure to connect you to those resources and tools.
Well, Amanda, I really appreciate all the time that you've given today. I think we've gone over a little bit on your available time. So I don't want to keep you, but this has really been great. I mean, this has really helped, and it's been nice to kind of, catch up in general about what TA has been doing. And
yeah, no, there's, it's a lot of exciting stuff happening here at the organization. We just launched our 5-year strategic plan this year. So that really lays out the next 5 years of growth and what we intend to do. So there's just a lot of things coming down the pike. But just because we have plans, doesn't mean we're checking all the boxes. So I also want to let folks know that if there's something that you're experiencing, if there's a resource or a tool that you've been looking for and you can't find it, please let us know. We are here to serve you. And if we don't know when we're doing a good job, and if we don't know when we're missing the mark, we're in the dark. So, please reach out and let us know how we're doing and what, if anything, you need that maybe we're not already providing.
Well, that is perfect. I really appreciate it. And I know the people listening do too. And just like to thank you again for the support of the podcast. I mean, that's huge. And
it's our pleasure, Ben. We have absolutely been thrilled with our partnership these last few years. You're just a fantastic partner, and we're just so pleased that you continue to do this, and that you're really helping us in our mission to raise awareness and make sure that we're getting in front of the people who need us. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I personally appreciate that. And then on behalf of the TAIA, I appreciate it as well.
Amanda, thank you so much. And I hope we get the chance to talk again in person soon too. That would be excellent.
Please. That would be amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep in touch. And yeah, absolutely. But thank you again so much for your time.
Of course. Anytime, Ben, and we will talk soon.
Thank you for listening. Thanks so much to Amanda Talty, President and CEO of the Tourette Association of America, for her time with us and all she brought to the conversation. I'd love your feedback. If this episode produced any questions or comments in your mind, then please send to tourettespodcast@gmail.com or use the contact form at tourettespodcast.com. I read everything that comes in. I'm not always able to reply immediately, but your messages are always delivered. They always come to me, and I always read them. You can also go to the Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook, run by the amazing Sophia in the UK. Thanks always to her for what she does. It's an awesome place, and it's perfect to bring any reflections you might have from this episode. Tourette's Podcast is sponsored by the Tourette Association of America, online at tourette.org, now in its 50th year as an organization. And don't forget that gala coming up November 10th in New York City. Info at tourette.org. And we will leave you to it. We'll be back soon with another episode of Tourette's Podcast. Thanks for listening. This is Ben.